Welcome back to the Deeper Pulse and the Culture series. As we move into the new year, I'll continue making room for survivor stories and what their remarkable resilience has to teach us as we continue this ongoing exploration of what puts the cult in culture. Today's episode is part one of a two-part conversation that is in some ways circling us back to the very beginning of the series. Let's take a closer look. When I first launched the Culture series back in August of, was that last year? Jesus, I think I'm still landing in 2023. Anyway, from the moment I started this series, I've been doing my damnedest to make it crystal clear that this isn't a series about this cult and that cult, nor is it meant to be a diatribe that centers on any specific organization. It's an ongoing conversation based on the premise that cult dynamics are every damn where. So some of you might be wondering, why circle back to the org? Allow me to explain. During episode 33, which was perhaps one of the most personally revealing episodes to date, I shared about 2 decades I spent cycling in and out of a variety of New Age wellness cultures. And I spent the majority of the episode sharing in detail about a 5-year period of my life when I was singularly, and I do mean singularly, devoted to a mind-body fitness company, which I refer to as the org. My relationship to the org transformed my life in both wonderful and woeful ways. It was both the wonderful and the woeful that led me to dive deeper into org culture in the early 2000s, when I decided to upend my life and relocate to Portland to work for the company's innermost circle. These were 3 of the most personally challenging years of my life. I wanted to acknowledge and share my own experiences and find ways to better understand the dynamics at play. So I did a ton of research, and I also invited my friend and former colleague Tracy Stamper to share her own, more recent story of working and being expelled as a trainer in the org. And I marveled at how, over a decade after I left, the same dysfunction seemed to be at play. Once I had language around it all, the patterns began to emerge quite clearly, as did the bittersweet realization that my silence had made me, however indirectly, complicit in the pain that Tracy and so many others had experienced in the many years that followed my leaving. Many former org teachers, trainers, and employees have since reached out to us, and I've had to override well-worn indoctrination that forbid me from even listening to their stories. You see, at the org, and in many New Age wellness circles, there are very clear boundaries around self-expression. Leadership makes an example of those who express less than pleasant emotions. These folks are considered high maintenance and low vibe, and they're very often accused of one of the org's 3 cardinal sins: gossiping, complaining, or, heaven forbid, creating drama. And as I speak these words to you, I'm quite certain that there is a hive mind buzz among those who are still in at the org, who are aware of the podcast and stand decidedly against those of us who choose to speak out against 30-plus years of culty wrongdoing. And the sad truth of the matter is, the indoctrination goes so deep that most of them will refuse to even listen to our stories. Toxic positivity breeds obedience, and so many people in culty New Age communities are suffering in silence, going along to get along, keeping quiet and falling in line, all in the name of higher vibrations. This conditioning is so insidious that even when we leave, the vow of silence, it sticks. In the last episode, I interviewed Sarah Edmondson and Nippy Ames, stars of HBO's The Vow, NXIVM survivors, and recognized advocates in the world of cult recovery. It was a validating conversation for me personally, and toward the end of the episode, they spoke at length about shame, specifically how it is a useful tool when it comes to indoctrination. If you missed it, it's worth circling back to, because they did an excellent job of describing and illustrating through personal examples how shame has the power to cage us or to set us free. Brené Brown has done a ton of research on shame, and I believe it was in her book Rising Strong where she revealed what research demonstrated to be the 2 biggest shame triggers we face. 2 internalized voices: never good enough, and who do you think you are? Yeah, that checks out. While I was in the org, I kept quiet in the face of fucked up power dynamics because I was always so busy second-guessing myself. In my mind, I never knew enough. I wasn't far enough along on the path to dare contradict my superiors, who made sure I knew my place in the order of things. Nor could I reconcile their love-bombing behavior that at times left me feeling pretty certain of my worth. It was a teeter-totter ride of highs and lows that left me feeling nauseous and spiraling in shame. The never good enough voice in my head was operating at full tilt. And then, once I left, I continued protecting the practice and its players, and I told myself it was because of all the benefit I'd received. But really it was because, well, who do you think you are? I remained silently complicit to the dysfunction because on some level I didn't believe that I had the right to own and name my experience, let alone call for top-down accountability. Perhaps what I find most fascinating in all of Brené Brown's research of late is that she's discovered that boundaries are absolutely essential to our ability to live a life free of anger, resentment, and self-righteousness. In fact, her research has shown that the more we fail to express our limits, the more likely we are to engage in gossip, judgment, and criticism of ourselves and others. It is our silent acquiescence that makes us intolerant to the needs of others and more vulnerable to toxic social engagement. She writes, "Compassionate people ask for what they need. They say no when they need to, and when they say yes, they mean it. They're compassionate because their boundaries keep them out of resentment." Oh, hell yes. And I would add, boundaries don't just create safety in the moment. They aren't just self-protective as we move into an uncertain future. They can liberate us from the past. To say aloud in front of others, that thing from before that happened to me, it isn't okay with me. And I will no longer pretend it doesn't matter. I will no longer be complicit and therefore bound to those who continue to inflict harm. But this stuff is complex. Telling the truth about our culty experiences isn't all about pointing fingers at power players at the top. And yes, there is very much a time and a place for that. But it's not only about them, those people over there doing those things. Culty culture is a complex and interdependent co-creation. There are many talented and well-meaning folks who deeply long to create change at the org, and this has been the case for decades. Many call for a change in leadership, adding their voices to many dozens who've cycled in and out of the inner circle over the course of 30-plus years. It's never happened, but let's just imagine for a moment that it did. When we mistakenly believe that all the problems in a dysfunctional system can be solved by changing out the face of who's serving at most high, who's calling the shots at the top of the pyramid, we're kind of sort of missing the point. Of course, better leadership will always lead to better results, and kicking all the narcissist a-holes to the curb is a good start. Accountability at the top can and will make a measurable difference, and it's an essential step worth taking. I'm not here to argue otherwise. But consider this. When we assume that personal agency is primarily a function of who is leading us, well, do you see how culty and problematic this is? We need to hold our leaders accountable, absolutely. And also, surrendering ourselves to the idea that we are all at the mercy of those in power, that's going to get us right back where we started. It's a both-and scenario. Is culty leadership the problem? Without a doubt, yes. And culty followership. There's a profound need for us humans to evolve and mature in our understanding of influence. Firing the leader of a culture they created that's inherently culty, it may solve the problem temporarily, but as long as there are people quite literally buying into the notion of supremacist power-down BS, problematic issues will continue to show up, especially when power replacement is coming from within the highest tiers of an existing hierarchy. We mimic the dynamics we were raised in, and cult leadership is no different. The point is, coercion, undue influence, narcissistic power plays, these are all very real psychoactive forces. But even if we nip each one of these in the bud at every turn, cult dynamics are going to continue because so many of us are unconsciously falling prey to a supremacy-born, capital C cult culture that fetishizes wealth, so-called beauty, and better than, higher up perspectives when it comes to personal development and social growth. Reforming culty culture will require leadership accountability and deep trauma-informed personal work. Both and. I am not going to pretend even for a nanosecond that I know how to fix any of this. I do not. But given the research I have done, I feel confident that it begins with a painful and inconvenient acknowledgement that cult dynamics exist not because of a few bad apples, but because the seeds that so many of us are continually placing in the ground carry within them the codes of patriarchal supremacist culture. But as long as we continue to bend the knee to people we admire, appreciate, and or stand to benefit from, this shit's going to keep happening. We need to be able to speak honestly about our experiences. We must hold ourselves and others accountable for culty actions. And we each have to do the inner work necessary to open our eyes to how we are uniquely conditioned to fall under the spell of influence. And this week's guest is doing all of the above. Yamuna Benedict was born into a culture of compliance. And by the time she began working at the org, she'd long been socialized to sacrifice personal integrity for the sake of a larger cause. Yamuna was drawn into the innermost circle of the org about 2 to 3 years after I left. There was a dramatic shift in leadership shortly after her arrival, and it is for this reason, in part, that her experience was, in my opinion, much darker and more troubling than mine. She is braver than brave showing up here today, especially given her visibility back in the day, and the way in which she was suddenly expelled from the community. Her sudden disappearance has been a mystery until now. It is a radical, audacious thing to tell the truth when you were taught never to speak of it. There are people who will attempt to shame Yamuna for looking back, but the real shame lies within the hearts of those who are silent, complicit, and sadly, blind to the ways in which they've been systematically conditioned to avoid empathic connection and wholehearted self-inquiry. And I say this with all sincerity. My heart goes out to them. I know how lonely it can be. And so does Yamuna. She spent 8 years in the shadows, and now she's ready to share her story with us. Not to gossip, complain, or create drama, but to liberate herself from a cycle of self-abandonment that existed before and after her time at the org. I've invited Tracy Stamper to join us in this conversation because of the love she exudes, and because I have learned where there is one, there are many. May Tracy's wholehearted presence be a representation of the growing community of former org members who now support and stand in solidarity with Yamuna. This conversation will roll out in 2 parts. And as in previous episodes, we will use aliases for the org and its leaders. This episode may be triggering to current or former org members, or anyone who has experienced high-demand groups or emotionally coercive relationships. Please listen with care. The stories and opinions shared in this episode are based on personal experience and are not intended to malign any group, individual, or organization. So here we are back together. Tracy Stamper's here with me, and she's once again bravely been willing to join me for a conversation related to the org, and essentially our circle of 2 has expanded considerably. And so where there were 2, now there are 3. In fact, there are dozens, many dozens, and our particular guest today is somebody that when Tracy and I sat down to speak with her, the conversation was so rich and revealing that we decided we wanted the conversation to continue, and we wanted to bring you all in on it. And most importantly, Yamuna wanted the same thing. So Tracy's back with me. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Candice.
I'm so glad you're here. It's really great to be in sharing this space again with you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So any thoughts you want to share with the listeners in regards to this conversation we're about to have and how and why you wanted to be here today for it?
Absolutely. Yamuna is a beautiful soul. When she came into our private Facebook group that Candice and I are holding for healing, the response that she got from others was so gorgeously overwhelming. People were so excited to see her. She was much like you were, Candice. She was such a pivotal figure in the org and developed relationships, and people got to know her. And then she just disappeared. And it has been, just on a personal level, it's been amazing to reconnect with her. And on a project level,
hard to find words, isn't it?
Yeah. It opened my eyes even wider than they've been opened. And I feel like I'm sitting on fire right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm just going to keep breathing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just hold beloved Yamuna with you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And I wanted you back because you're also very beloved in terms of the community. One of the things about doing this with you, Tracy, has been just who you are. The purity of your spirit is a really unique thing. And doing this with you made me feel all the braver because I don't know anyone who can speak ill of you. Your heart is just so always in the right place. And so having you to walk through this fire with has made me feel a little bit fireproof. So I want to thank you for that. And I wanted you back for this for obvious reasons. Like, we laid this foundation together in many ways. And also, pragmatically speaking, you were in the org when Yamuna was there. And so you have a particular perspective that I don't have. I was so far removed. And while the listeners will learn, Yamuna and I have a lot in common in terms of our experience many, many years apart, I wasn't there. I didn't get to know her and see the role that she played. And also I didn't have the perspective that you have of a trainer, which was a specific kind of relationship that you had with her and that inner circle that had grown so much since I left. So it just feels really important that you're here on a lot of levels. So thank you for being willing to do this with me. And I'm super excited for us to invite Yamuna in to join us. So shall we do it?
Yes, let's do it.
Yay. Okay. All right, everybody. Welcoming in Yamuna Benedict. Hi, Yamuna. Welcome.
Hi, Candice. Hi, Tracy. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining. And so how are you feeling, Miss Yamuna, showing up here with us today?
I have feelings of excitement and joy and a little bit of nervousness. Tracy just asked if I was going to announce I was on the podcast or let it be a surprise. And I've been thinking about this. And I told my boyfriend last night, I'm doing this. No one knows I'm doing it. And I want it to be a surprise. I'm going to be the surprise guest on the podcast series. And I don't want to hear what anyone has to say of me speaking out. They can listen. And if they want to reach out, they can say something.
Beautiful. Yeah. I love that. Well, we will honor that. And that's how we'll do this. So it'll be our little secret.
I love it.
Yeah. Until it's broadcast all over the world.
That's what I did too. For whatever reason, there was a sense of safety that approach gave me. And it just kind of held me.
Yeah, I feel safe and comfortable with both of you. I've been enjoying the group after the org, and seeing who's in the group was, surprising. It's part why I reached out to you both because when I started listening, first the podcast got shared with me as a recommendation that I should listen to it because when my friend listened to it, she said it reminded me of you. And so I immediately was like, well, wow, what's Candice saying? And Candice and I had never met before a couple of weeks ago on Zoom, but we both knew of each other because we've both been involved in the org. And when I started listening to the podcast, literally my mouth fell to the ground because it could have been me. It was almost identical. So many parallels. And after the third episode, when you got introduced on, Tracy, the flood of memories and emotions that came up during the NGT years, because that's when I worked there, I had to reach out to you both. I could not sit here anymore. And so I hadn't even made it through the whole thing, but I was like, there's too much connection. I'm feeling this pull to reach out. And I'm so glad that I did.
Yes.
As am I.
And just for the listeners, NGT is an acronym I won't go into the details about, but it's regarding the trainers at the org and when there was first a big push to bring on a whole new group of trainers. So Yamuna was there in other regards as well, which we'll get into, at a really, really critical time in the org's evolution as a company, as an organization. So that's part of why it's so amazing to have her here and to hear that perspective. And it's really interesting for me. You know, I left in 2007 and I had heard of you, Yamuna, like quite a bit over the years after. And I remember thinking, I hope that she's not having the same experience that I did. And I imagine that she is.
I was.
Yeah, just feeling a sense of connection to you, even though we had never met. So it's pretty cool that we've recently connected because I felt that over the course of time. I just always, you were just a particular person. I was really curious about your journey and what had gone down. And so I was really interested in talking with you. I had no idea what would be revealed, which we'll get to. Because in the ways I hear you saying that your journey was parallel in many ways with mine, and also there were some things given the critical time that you were in where I would say I found your journey all the more disturbing than mine. And I just feel so much empathy toward you that you had to walk through that fire. And I'm just so deeply touched and overwhelmed with gratitude that you are willing to show up here.
It does take some courage.
It does.
Yeah.
I see you.
Yeah, we know, right, Tracy?
We know.
It was one of the things in the podcast that made me feel compelled to reach out and want to share the story is how you refer to these years, you kind of gloss over them. And when you said that, I realized that's exactly what I did because I had kids and you have to keep going. And so I just picked myself up and I just kind of moved on. And when the podcast came out, this is the flood of emotions and memories that just became overwhelming. And then I'm like, I'm not over this because I have all these feelings. All these feelings are overpouring.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I think it's really important. You bring up such a really critical piece of this that I hope we can communicate around is that, like, I hear feedback. I don't even hear it. I feel it, sense it, feedback around like, oh, let the past be the past. Why do you need to go back and even look at any of this? Aren't you just, well, there's the being a victim argument, which we all have feelings about. But beyond that, I actually had someone just recently, I was at a gathering and I was sharing about the series that I'm doing. And every time I mention cult dynamics in my work, people like go crazy balls. Like they just, everyone's so fascinated by it. And so there was lots of questions and people sharing their own experiences, which there's always at least one person in the room who has a story to share. And then one of the individuals there, who I consider a very good friend, who I was sort of in line with her way of thinking for the longest time, she said something about, when do you decide when it's time to just move on? And it was sort of like, I heard where she was coming from. She was coming from this place of love. And it's this, again, this indoctrination around, if I tell my story, if I do work around the wounds that resulted from it, that I'm somehow spiritually regressing, that I'm like stuck. When in fact, this is the doorway through, in my mind, to the liberation, to the quote unquote spirituality we've all been yammering on about for all these years. Like, how do we, if we don't reckon with what's true and what's real, how do we move forward? And so I have a lot of feelings about that, obviously. So I'll just let that stand. And I'm curious, Yamuna, for you, what is your purpose today? Because I know you and I know your heart. It's not, let's take down this company. That's not where you're coming from. Like, tell us for you and your own journey of self-expression, like, why are you here today?
Well, there's probably several reasons I'm here. The involvement in the org is one segment, but the topic of cults and the cult in culture got my brain reeling. Most people probably don't know my background, and I was born into a cult. My parents were living in and running the Berkeley Hare Krishna Temple in 1975 when I was born. That was my first home. My birth certificate name is Yamuna Jivana Devi Dasi. It was given by the spiritual master Prabhupada at the time. And so when I started listening to the podcast, I started reflecting on my own life, that my entire life I have been in cults, starting with birth. And I am here because I just want to learn my own patterns and behaviors and what is the attraction, because the org is not the only cult-like organization I've been in. I've been involved in 2 different MLMs heavily. When I moved into the second MLM, I got witch hunted from the first group that I was in and banished, and my account canceled, and the whole group of girls here came after me. I just had another job that was so similar, the energy and feelings, as working at the org. And I was there almost the same amount of time. And it was about the same amount of time into the job that I knew this isn't right. So why did I stay another 3 years? And so for me, it's kind of like, if you don't look at the past, you're never going to move forward, learn, grow, change, learn from your mistakes. So just closing the door, glossing over it, that happened 8 years ago. I'm still carrying this around and making decisions in my life from this experience that I glossed over. So that's why I'm here, to look at myself, my patterns, what is the attraction? And then once I know it's not healthy, why am I staying for more abuse? What is that? And, you touched on this in the episodes I listened to, that the tools you were learning help give words to the feelings and recognition of what was going on. It's exactly what happened to me. And what I realized, this nervous feeling was very familiar to me. It's how I felt around my father. I always kind of had this nervous fist. So it was normal. It was just normal to feel this way. And then as I was getting involved with the org and doing the practice and really paying attention to the sensations in my body, putting a name to this, I called it the stress fist in my gut. And that maybe it's normal, but this probably is not healthy for me. But it still took me years to get out.
That's really beautifully articulated. Thank you for that. I think you speak far more than yourself in terms of why we're here and sharing. So I really appreciate that.
Another reason why I'm here, because you spoke to me, and I hope someone else can heal, feel inspired to make a change, or know they're not alone, or whatever that thing is that helps you heal.
Yeah, for sure.
I have no doubt that will come from your sharing, since you are a beloved human. And it was so amazing to see the reception that you got when you came into our online group. It was beautiful.
Yeah. I have a lot of kind words from amazing people.
Oh, it makes my heart so happy. So happy. That's why there's a group. That's why we're coming together. It's not a banding together to disband. I mean, that's there. I'm not going to lie. Now it's there. It wasn't there in the beginning for me. And the more I learn, it's sort of there too. And it's also really more than that. It is just this feeling of, well, it's very much like the purpose of the Me Too movement or any sort of social justice movement where people come together and they have that Me Too experience of, oh my God, I'm not the only one. I've been in this silo of isolation and I haven't been able to talk about this. And now we're all openly able to express these things. And some of the folks that are in the group have been out as long as me. And it's the first time they're talking about it too. So, yeah, this is just really meaningful. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your childhood, if you're open to sharing, given that you, in some ways, I say sometimes like my first cult was my family. And I say that because I believe that's everyone's first cult in a way. The way that I use the word cult, I'm actually trying to reorient people around that word, right?
Right.
So my family was my first cult and it operated in a certain way. And your family, in terms of your nuclear family, was probably your first cult in the way that I mean it, but also it was within the context of
a cult.
Of a cult, right? So there's a perspective that you have and I would love to hear more about your childhood and what you experienced as a child and then what you see now from the perspective that you have. So start in the middle and go both ways, share with us about your childhood.
My parents they're running the temple. My dad's title was the temple president. My mom was making the altars, dressing the deities, making the flower arrangements. I was really small at this time. And I was a baby. And my mom tells a lot of stories. I do have one memory of I was probably 2.5 or 3 years old in the temple, and I'm just running around doing whatever. And I have this very vivid, clear memory of a man taking me into a closet and closing the door. And I was standing looking at the door, and I can still see his figure. And I do believe he was getting ready to molest me. And right before he did, my mom, she realized she couldn't find me. She was going everywhere, and the door flung open, and my mom ran around him and picked me up. And I clearly remember this. And a lot of people are aware there was a huge lawsuit against the ISKCON temple. So ISKCON's the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. That's what the American temples are called, ISKCON. There's lots of sects of Hinduism. So this is what I'm referring to, the ISKCON movement.
Yeah.
They have schools called Gurukuls where the kids would go to Gurukul. And years ago, there was a huge lawsuit against the people that were putting the school on for molesting and abusing the children. And when it was time for me to go to school, my dad wanted to send me to the Gurukuls. He was all in to everything going on. And thank God for my protective mother who was like, my baby's not going anywhere. I was the firstborn. My mom had 3 miscarriages before she had me due to the stress of getting up at 2 a.m. And she just said she got dragged around till she would miscarry. I was the most wanted baby ever. And when my dad wanted to send me away, she just, no. And my mom, a lot of their relationship was a doormat, and my dad steamrolled her, but it was one thing that my mom stood up for. And I'm so grateful, because who knows what kind of person I would be if I would have been shipped off to the Gurukul school. So instead of going to Gurukul, my parents started shifting from temple life to business life. In the Vedic scriptures, they call it grihasta. It's family and business. You're raising the family, grihasta lifestyle. And they had an incense and potpourri business. So they slowly started drifting away from living and breathing the temple and to running a business. I remember selling incense with my mom at the Berkeley flea market when I was little. She was selling incense by the stick.
That's awesome.
I still go to the temple once in a while. My brother got married in New York 7 years ago in the Krishna temple. My brother and father are still very, very involved in the Hare Krishna movement. Growing up, I just remember, as I was getting older, I didn't feel comfortable in the environments. There was definitely the hierarchy. There's a lot of chauvinism. women are in the background, seen and not heard, barefoot and pregnant kind of mentality, serve the men. And so I just remember as I was getting older and I didn't like being at the temple, it felt very judgy. When I was 22 and in India, I met my children's father, who's from America, who'd been into the Hare Krishna since he was 17 years old. And he lived at the LA Temple on Venice Boulevard. A lot of people know the LA Hare Krishna Temple. And so that was the first place I lived with him. So I lived in the community there. And I found it very hypocritical. There was a lot of show going on the street. You have to chant on your beads. You have your bead bag and you chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. But then people were doing things they're not supposed to do behind closed doors, but in front of everyone, there was perfect. And if you weren't doing those things, there was a lot of judgment. Oh, you didn't chant your rounds today. I'm better than you. And so I just never really liked the energy and dynamics and the judginess. I've been to India 3 times on spiritual journeys with my father to all the holy lands. My name, Yamuna, I'm named after a sacred river in India that means the river of life. It's in Vrindavan, where Lord Krishna was born. That was my last trip to India in 1997. And it's where I met my boy's dad, came back here and ended up pregnant with twins within about 3 months. I say the river of life gave me more life than I bargained for.
That's great.
But there was a Swami or a guru in India he was American, but he had lived in India for over 2 decades. And I remember I was in a very long taxi ride with him, and the taxis, it feels like you're going to die when you ride in a taxi in India. It's very scary. And my brother and I are in the back seat and he's in the front seat. And I remember talking to him about the feelings at the LA Temple and the judgy and this, and, I'm better than you because I'm doing this. And he was the first person that inspired me. And he said, it doesn't matter if you chant 16 rounds, if you're doing it mindlessly. Krishna or God, it's what you want to do from your heart. So if you only chant one bead, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, God loves you. It's only what you're doing, not what you're not doing. And I will never forget that taxi ride. And it was the first time that I felt inspired by someone in the ISKCON movement, because everyone else focuses on what you're not doing. So yeah, a little bit about my Krishna background. Now have found the Chabad. I have a lot of Jewish background. My mother's mother is Jewish. My father's father is Jewish. And it's something I've been learning about the last 6 years. And Chabad means the Jewish Learning Center. And they're just trying to educate Jews and bring Jews back to Judaism, because after World War II, people really let go of all the practices and rituals and tried to hide being Jewish. And they're here to teach everyone to be Jewish again. So I was just at a women's class last night. It's called Rosh Chodesh. It's once a month, a women's class. And so I've always been on a spiritual journey, seeking enlightenment, growth, probably what attracted me to the org, the personal growth. And I've been a dancer my whole life, but that it was something more than fitness. And I know there's a lot of feelings and opinions on that it's more than just a fitness class, but it was for me. And part of it, I think, really comes from my background of just, where is God? How do you grow? Mm-hmm. How do you become more aware? How do you help people?
Yeah, I really consider myself a seeker as well. And interesting that you brought in that word, because I was just on the trail this morning listening to Sarah Edmondson being interviewed on We Can Do Hard Things. She's talking to Glenn and Abby and Amanda and sharing her story, which made me delighted beyond belief that they were featuring a cult survivor story on such a large platform. And Sarah's just amazing. She and Nippy have been on the podcast, and she's an extraordinary individual. And I was listening to this, and Glennon said something and I'm not going to do it justice. She said it in her Glennon way, but she said something about how she's a seeker, and being a seeker isn't being a finder. Like she says, if you are a seeker and you feel like you've found it, then you're probably in a cult.
Wow.
Which I thought was such a beautifully simple way of saying it. And she was sort of saying it tongue in cheek, but I think there's really something to that. And that she's like, basically being a seeker is seeking and seeking and seeking until the day you die. Yeah. And staying in that place of being a seeker. And so she identified herself that way. I definitely identify that way. Tracy, I'm not sure if you do.
You're sure.
You're sure. Okay. I feel like I know you, but I don't want to speak for you. So we're all seekers here, and I do believe that there were some pieces that helped me to find parts of myself in the org's programming. So I don't want to discount that, and I really don't want us to – we really need to come up with a better metaphor than throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's just the worst. But I don't want to do that, right? It's like those of us who are seekers did find something. Mm-hmm. And those that are seekers who are still involved are finding something. And then there's also both and this other component of it, which we're going to get into in a moment. So let's talk about, you were on this path of seeking. How did you find and get involved with the org in the first place? And how did that happen?
A friend brought me to a local class that was just in a rented studio on East Side. And it was, I believe, fall of 2007. And I went to this class and I loved it. This is what I need. And moving and shaking and yelling. And like, it just felt so good. And I went every time the class was, basically, I think it was twice a week. And I went for about a year before I learned. Well, it was interesting. So this person kind of presented the class like it was their work. And so it was like a year before I knew there was the studio downtown that's headquarters. There's more classes. There's a training program. I was just like blown away. What? There's more? This isn't just this one teacher? What? And so as soon as I found that out, I like drove downtown and went to a class, and Raul was teaching. And whoa, talk about another level class. This is so exciting. And so then I'm falling into the studio downtown, right into the core of it all, and taking classes. And I did my white belt in November 2009. I did the white belt on a scholarship. I wrote a letter that I love the practice. I'm a single mom. I can't afford this. And Seth granted me a white belt. And I did the white belt, and it was an interesting experience that I enjoyed. Marissa was supposed to co-train with another trainer, and she never showed up to the training. And so I kept hearing about Marissa. I had never met Marissa or gone to a class the whole time I was going to the studio. She was not real present. And so I was very curious about her. I had danced with Raul, and the week goes by and Marissa never shows up. And the next thing I did was a workshop with a visiting trainer who did learn a routine workshop. And so I learned the routine. And on, I believe it was New Year's Day, we did a big teacher jam, and I got asked to participate as a new white belt. And I was very excited and scared. And they asked would I teach the first song, which was like an 8.5-minute song. And I was like, oh my God, but I did it, and I moved people to tears that morning teaching this song. And I just was high off the whole class and the feedback and all of it. And a few days later, like January 8th or something, I was coming out of a class and got in the elevator, and Seth hopped in the elevator, and he was getting out on the 3rd floor. So it was a 6-story building. 4th floor is the dance studios. 3rd floor is the org's office. The door's open. He hops out. He looks at me. He goes, hey, you got to come talk to me. And he offers me a job as his executive assistant. And I'm like, wow, yes, this is great. Yes, sure. I'm all excited. But this is where our stories get parallel. I didn't apply for this job.
Right.
I'm like, oh, that's exactly what happened to me. Candice, hey, wait a minute.
You were chosen.
Two days later, I believe January 10th, 2010 was my first day of work at the org. And I'm very excited. And I go to the office and Seth greets me with, "You're also going to manage the studio. I just fired the studio manager."
And this was 2010, right?
This is January 2010.
Right. So they had, just to give people a sense, they'd gone through, I think, 3 studio managers since I'd left.
Since you left.
Since I had left. So this was like, I think the 3rd. Maybe it was the 2nd, but I'm pretty sure it was the 3rd.
Probably.
After I left, studio manager that was let go. And then Yamuna was hired to do 2 jobs at once, something that she never applied for.
At least 2 jobs.
Yes. And I was actually really excited to manage the studio because I loved the studio. And so coming from the Krishna movement, the studio was my temple. I worshiped the floors. I felt the energy in those floors that were put in 1905 and had been danced on for 105 years. I felt it. And I worshiped it and it became my temple. My spiritual practice, and I felt connected to something bigger when I danced. I called it praying with my feet. I still call dancing praying with my feet.
Beautiful.
But getting greeted with, "You're also going to manage the studio," I was excited, but then I was like, well, what happened to, and I wish I could remember her name. I can't remember her name. I can picture her face. And Seth just said, "I fired her." And I don't know if she was doing a good job or a bad job, but right away it initiated this like, oh, this isn't exactly what I thought. And this poor girl just lost her job. And then, of course, she hated me. So I had an enemy immediately in the organization. She felt like I was vying for her job, trying to get her out, which wasn't the case. But as I worked there for the years, there was lots of that kind of thing going on, backstabbing, trying to get someone out and someone in, and favoritisms and stuff like that. So that was my start. 2010 was a pivotal transitional year for the org. Raul had announced his retirement at the end of 2009, and he was committed to a whole plethora of trainings at headquarters that year that he did. And so I got to work with him for a year through this transition of him exiting. And it was very interesting. All the personalities, Seth, Marissa, and Raul, I quickly could see why Raul was exiting the power dynamics. And I like when you started talking about the meetings, because it was never a meeting. They went on and on and on and on and on and ended up like this counseling session that nothing ever got accomplished.
Yes, exactly. Ding, ding, ding.
And so that's all going on. And Raul had basically just stepped out and was showing up for the trainings at this point. And Marissa and Seth are figuring out how they're going to run the organization. So I'm running the studio. I'm hosting these packed trainings. Every single training had 55 attendees. They're coming from all over the world. I'm greeting them and signing the waivers and checking them in and dancing. And I did do my green belt, Raul's final green belt in July 2010. And so I did get to do one training with him. And he's quite serious in the trainings, and the pillows have to be a certain way. And he was very, very particular. He exits, and now it's Marissa's show. And I remember the first training that was just for Marissa, I want to say it was the first NGT training, but I don't know for sure. I can't clearly remember, but I had checked everyone in and she's nowhere. And I'm calling her and texting her and she's nowhere. And she had been drinking and shopping and forgot that there was a training.
Oh boy.
And so she shows up about 45 minutes late. I'm trying to entertain everyone. And so I just remember like, oh, this is like totally different than Real. Real was like, are you going to be on time?
Oh, yeah.
Like to the second.
Clockwork.
And then here I'm like, so I'm all in that mode, like, do it perfect. And now, so I do all my part. And then the trainer doesn't show.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, this is like totally different. Then, okay, I have to learn to work with this and babysit and track. And is she going to show up?
Wow.
So was that kind of how it was once Raul left? Was that consistently an issue?
Not exactly like that, but also like you immediately getting asked to go up in subclass after you've been at the office all day. And the same thing happened to me as the studio manager. You're filling out the pay sheet for all the teachers that week. And so you sub to class, you put your name down for the teacher fee. And Seth quickly pulled me over and said, oh, no. You don't get paid to teach here. This is part of your measly salary. He didn't say measly, but it was very small. And that it was all included. And I was like, oh, okay. And I continued to teach the 545 class many, many times, which also became a whole drama amongst the local teachers and who has the right to teach. And it was quite political all the time. Ugh. I call it managing a lot of diva energy.
Everyone's trying to clamber up the ladder.
Yes.
Like that's how everything's structured. So I just really want to underscore that was the way that everything functioned was such that certain people would be in the spotlight. They would be like the chosen child, the rising star, the whatever. And it was very sudden. You never know who it was going to be, how long they were going to be there, and when they were just going to be cast aside. And so everyone was sort of trying to get mom and dad's love, if you will. Like it was hitting that mark for so many of us. Maybe not everyone, but for many of us. And the diva energy, you use the word diva. Wasn't Marissa like openly willing to be called a diva? Wasn't that like a normalized thing? Yeah. So that diva energy was sort of pedestalized.
Yes.
Right? So not only are you rewarded for your hustle and your willingness to sacrifice, you're also rewarded for taking on that energy, that sort of diva energy. So yeah, I bet it was kind of a shit show, especially after Raul left, because there was all that many more classes.
Yes. Who's going to fill the classes? Particularly the Sunday class was a major bone of contention.
Yeah. Well, that was the dance. That was like the dance church class at the temple Sunday mornings.
Yes. I even know about how special the Sunday morning class was all the way out here, however many thousands of miles. And that was real estate. That was prime real estate. I even knew that.
Yeah, some people would stay when they'd come for trainings. They would stay on. The training was a week long. Did you stay for a Sunday class, Tracy?
At least once, of course. I did.
Sure.
Yeah. As I worked at the org, hiring and firing went on constantly. It was a revolving door of Marissa and Seth, hire, fire. And this stress fist that I speak of got bigger. Like, oh God, that's going to be me one day. Oof. That's how I just remember feeling like that for years when you watch the owners hire and fire constantly.
Do you remember, Yamuna? It was so long ago for me that I don't have clear memory of this. Do you remember how folks that were fired or who left were they talked about? Was that ever discussed? Obviously, you knew because you were in like, executive team meetings, what was going on. But in terms of like, how was that held by the leadership and then the larger community?
It's like you're dead to me. They're gone. We don't talk about them anymore. That's mostly what I remember. And so as they would fire people, guess who got to fill their shoes? I did. And I remember at one point, I couldn't keep up with everything. I worked 7 days a week. My phone rang 24 hours a day. And I remember then Seth said he was going to get me an assistant. But I didn't get to pick my assistant. He got to pick my assistant.
Of course.
And we put an ad out, and this stack of resumes come in. And I remember how he started sorting them was first to go on social media and look at their photos and are they attractive or not. And so anyone that was not attractive went in the garbage right away. As my time went on there, they're hiring and firing people. And as they would fire people, I would get the responsibility. So the org had a record label and they fired the person doing that job. I start licensing the music. Immediately upon my hiring, part of the executive assistant to the CEO was overseeing the clothing line that they did. And so I was very hands-on, and we actually revamped the entire clothing line, redid the patterns, photo shoots, getting it up online, pricing it all. So that was all under my watch. Managing the studio, I was very much like the office manager, training any new person. And so these were all like, when I got hired, there was a studio manager, there was someone overseeing the clothes, overseeing the record label, running the office. But by the end of my 5 years there, I was doing all of these jobs without an increase in pay, even though they would fire a salaried person, including also teaching classes.
God.
This makes so much sense, not having known that when I was an active participant. But there would be so many different things that as a trainer, I would need answers to. And when it seemed to me that whenever I would email or call or text and ask a question, I almost always got the response, "Oh, you want to talk to Yamuna?" Like over and over and over again. And I do remember thinking, is there anything that this woman does do there? Now I know why.
Not a lot, apparently.
Yeah. I got told that a lot. The trainers knew if they wanted to get anything done, go directly to Yamuna. They figured out I am the bridge to getting answers to questions, moving something forward. Thank you for recognizing that, Tracy.
Absolutely. And I did learn, it took me a while, but I did learn, don't even bother with that initial email or call or just contact Yamuna.
Yeah.
So how many people are doing that, right? Like coming to you directly because they don't have any other inroad to get what they need. And to be clear, you would think that the real answers to the questions would be at the top of the hierarchy, but it's really just right below that because of the chaos that's happening and has ensued at the top. So I'm curious, how much were you working?
Yeah.
I don't even know, all the time. I never had a vacation. I did my blue belt in Sarasota, Florida in January 2012, which was a not paid vacation, but I was representing the org basically and worked the whole time. And when I came back, I told Seth, I remember telling him, you should just send me to trainings because I think I got every person to sign up for the next training there.
Yeah.
And I should just be like a brand ambassador. I remember telling him I should be like an antenna to the headquarters because the trainings loved it. They loved it, having some connection there. And I'm a natural salesperson. And I'm pretty sure like every single person signed up. I'm like, I should just do this. You want to make money? You want to grow it? Like, just send me to the training. But no. He wanted me sitting right next to him.
Well, you have that natural ability that made you, and also the ability to apparently multitask like a mofo. People who say that multitasking doesn't exist, I still really debate that. And
I do too.
You can juggle and dance and chew gum at the same time. So there you have this natural ability to recruit because you believe so much in the promise. It's like that ability to recruit is really sort of built into, like, if you really have bought into the vision. And then you have these other skills in terms of communicating. Like, you're able to do that. And you have what I've heard called in the cultiverse charisma by proxy. So if you're close to the source, quote unquote, put that in quote, the source. And I'm putting that in quotes because we literally use that language, the source.
Mm-hmm.
The founders were the source.
The source, yes.
You're close to the source. So, and I know as somebody who experienced charisma by proxy, you have this certain magnetism and ability to influence because you're connected to the top line influencers. So you just showing up there in and of itself is a sales point, right? And you saw that. You saw the potential of that. And I'm curious to hear from the part of you, and I think I have a feeling and sense this is going to circle back to kind of your upbringing and the environments you were in. I'm going to make this observation. You tell me if it's true. You seemed sort of wired for this self-sacrificing devotion.
Yes.
Like that working overtime wasn't really like a thing in your mind, or like, am I taking a vacation? Like the devotion and the willingness
the greater good.
Yes. Say more about that.
In the Krishna Temple, they teach you to be the servant of the servant of the servant. How can you serve? So I could serve this whole global community, which was a 24-hour job, basically, 7 days a week. And so, I definitely, and this is part of what I'm just fascinated with, the whole cult and culture and the series and my wiring. And I got great pleasure in serving the studio and the teachers and the trainers. And honestly, it is the fuel that kept me going, is the love reciprocation that I got from the community, not from my employers, but from the community, is what kept me going. And I felt like I was part of something bigger than myself, helping it grow around the world. And it could change someone's life. And it was exciting.
Yeah. And so was there a sense like that whatever hardship that it might bring to you,
you get blessings. It's karma. So I'm banking all this good karma, basically. Like I'm putting good karma in my bank. If I sacrifice myself when I need something, karma or God's going to give it back to me at a different time.
Fascinating. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of like your savings account. You're just banking it. I'm going to bank this in for the future.
Yeah.
Well, then you are a very, very wealthy woman, Yamuna.
Very wealthy. Thank you.
We'll be back next week with part 2 of our conversation with Yamuna, where she shares more details about her time at the org. Tell us a little bit about your scrambling around, doing all the things. And also, it sounds like you were maybe cleaning up some messes at the same time. Do you want to speak to that at all?
All the time. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. That's what I always felt like. I was trying to keep the curtain closed. Don't look back here. Everything's perfect. It was a show all the time. Ooh.
You won't want to miss the rest of this conversation. If you want to reach out to me, Tracy, or Yamuna in the meantime, head to thedeeperpulse.com/share to send a secure email, or feel free to reach out to one of us directly. If you're a former or transitioning org member looking for community and support, send us a message telling us why you'd like to join our free and private After the Org group. We'd love to welcome you into the mix. And lastly, if you'd like to access bonus content, support this work, and keep the podcast ad-free, check out the TDP Patreon page, where a monthly donation gives you immediate and unlimited access to ebooks and bonus episodes where Tracy and I are deconstructing New Age wellness dogma. Everyone is welcome and there are no culty hierarchies. You can pledge anywhere from $1 to $20 a month, and everyone gets the same goodies, regardless of how much or how little they pay. You can learn more at patreon.com/The Deeper Pulse. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you back here next week. Ciao.